Previews Leon. Sam no Jobs Vídeo.
So Jennifer, pick up that box there on the table and look inside.
Oh, come
That's
on.
your cookie box.
Oh, that is cute.
See?
With my perfect cookies?
Exactly. And all these boxes are actually prefab, and you can buy them at craft stores.
Okay.
So they are made in the shapes of houses. Now, the windows are very beautiful. So you have little windows cut out. Mine are made out of craft paper and some gold corrugated paper, and you can buy it gold.
Do you glue gun on the thing or on the thing?
I do it on the object that's going to be glued. And watch out for your fingers, because hot glue is hot.
No joke. Do you craft every Christmas?
I craft every Christmas. I try to think of something. If it's not my card, it'll be my invitation to the party.
Do you get obsessed and stay up all night doing it?
All night.
'Cause that's what I would do.
Yeah.
If you don't speak, then that means you're gay. Hello, gamers. Today we're talking about the German Reich. Not that one, I don't want to get cancelled. And not that one either, that one's kind of boring. This one, yes, exactly. The German Empire was founded in blah 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 blah. Honestly, the unification of Germany has a pretty similar situation to that of World War II. It is heavily documented by just about everyone. And if you're a history buff, you know exactly how Germany unified, and you don't really need me to tell you how it happened. This is a story about the last German emperor and the fall of the German monarchy. So there is also a bit of a situation, which is some people are simply curious about Germany and want to learn more and don't really know how this happened. So I am going to tell you the briefest possible summary to the unification of Germany. France. I'm actually serious. The French had their hands in Germany. There was a war between the Prussian-led North German Confederation and France. The North Germans convinced the independent South German states to join the war on their side. And the French, they did what French do best, and they lost. At the defeat of France, the German countries who won decided to team up to be best sexy friends, and they formed the German Empire, with the kings of Prussia stepping up to be the emperors. Germany's sheer size, manpower, and industrialization led to the country's quick rise to that of a great power, with, in fact, the capacity to rival ones such as the Russian Empire with its terrifying army, and the British with their massive-ass navy. And the rival the Germans did. When we reached the year of 1914, Germany had the third largest colonial empire, its own sphere of influence and network of alliances, and its sizable strength was about to be tested, as some random Austrian dude, he doesn't really matter, decided to play catch the bullet while driving in a car, thus triggering World War I. For this war, Germany had plans, big plans. They were going to overwhelm and defeat the Western Allies before Russia could arm its army, and so the Germans marched west, towards Paris, and they got their asses handed to them. The Western Front quickly devolved into a complete stalemate, with neither side managing to break the deadlock. However, a different situation was unfolding on the Eastern Front. The Russians had mobilized far quicker than expected, but their army's performance was not good. The reasons were numerous and interesting in their own right, but I'm not gonna tell you what they were. Learn it yourself, noobs. The Russian situation was made worse, in fact, when their Tsar Nicholas decided that he could run the army better than the last chief he had there. And just 3 years after the war started, the Russian Empire fell into a civil war, and the Soviets quickly made peace with the Germans. giving up a massive amount of land. However, the German Empire was not doing too good as well. The Allied blockade of the country had completely destroyed their food stocks, plus they had completely ran out of reserves for their army, and the United States had joined the war. The United States in particular were a source of huge concern for the Germans, as their army alone could completely overpower the Germans in the West. So the Kaiser had one last chance to win the war. The hundreds of thousands of now free troops from the Eastern Front meant that Germany had a numerical advantage over the Allies. But again, it was a temporary one, as the United States were deploying troops in Europe at a rate of 10,000 per day. So the German attacks at this time became known as the German Spring Offensive. But before we talk about its result, we need to talk about the state of the German armed forces at this time. The Russian Revolution had radicalized the average German soldier, who was both exhausted and convinced that the war was lost at this time. Food shortages were reported throughout the entire country, and in fact, things were getting so bad that the winter of 1916 to 1917 became known as the turnip winter, as the average civilian mostly survived on turnips, a vegetable that they only used to feed livestock. And despite the newfound superiority over the Allies, it was still not enough men to consolidate any gains that the Germans got in their spring offensive. So in short, the offensive was a failure, everybody was starving, everybody hated the war, and nearly everyone thought that the war was lost by now. Oh, and yeah, they thought maybe the Russians had a good thing going with their hot new revolution. During the whole mess at home for the German Empire, in fact, about 750,000 Germans died of malnutrition. But despite that number, the war continued. Until, that is, the Allies began their 100-day offensive in the West. And why is it called that? Well, it's because in the span of 100 days, they collapsed the entire German front line and destroyed their empire. Not kidding. The Allies had once again regained the numerical advantage, and with around 6 million total soldiers to the German 3.5 million, they went on the offensive, pushing back the Germans. This military failure proved to be the empire's undoing, starting with a mutiny of sailors who refused to go into sea to fight the British on November 4th. These sailors went to all coastal major cities in Germany. The revolution had started, and by the 7th of November, workers' councils were established in many cities around the empire. One in particular, in Bavaria, had already exiled the King of Bavaria. Oh, and yeah, quick explanation time to those who are wondering why the hell there's a King of Bavaria and the Emperor of Germany. Germany at the time worked somewhat like it does now, or how the United States do today. The old kingdom still existed, but were subservient to the emperor. However, they got to keep their fancy titles. Explanation over. And so, by the end of November, all 22 monarchs of the empire got ousted. But where was the emperor? Where was Wilhelm? He was in Belgium, in the town of Spa, having a wonderful spa day. He was shocked at the news of the revolution. Twice, in fact, that was started by the Navy, the branch of the armed forces which he seemed to care about the most. And he spent a good while there undecided on abdication or not. In fact, at one point, he thought he could abdicate the imperial crown, but keep his Prussian kingship. Never mind the fact that doing that is illegal in the German constitution, and never mind the fact that the people were kicking royals out everywhere up and down the fucking country. So, on the 10th of November 1918, the Kaiser accepted the situation. After even Hindenburg, who was a monarchist through and through, advised the Kaiser to abdicate and go into exile. So Wilhelm took a train and entered the Netherlands. He was not safe from the international community, however, as in fact the Treaty of Versailles itself stipulated that the German emperor must be caught and prosecuted for his crimes and apparent disregard of international treaties, with the British king writing that he saw his cousin as the greatest criminal in history, and the king's prime minister apparently wanting to hang the Kaiser? Cool. He didn't have all that many friends, you can see. However, despite this, the British actually didn't care all that much about prosecuting him. They never made that big of an effort to pressure the Dutch after they refused their initial call to extradite them. And the Americans themselves didn't want to prosecute him. Woodrow Wilson argued that it would destabilize the newfound international order. So, he stayed in the Netherlands until his death in the year of 1941. And what did his life look like while he was there? Well, Wilhelm bought a private home, which became known as Huis Dorn? I don't know if I said that right. Anywho, and he brought in his ridiculous amount of furniture and goods from his original home in Germany, something which the Weimar Republic allowed him to do. And so, we fast forward to 1922, and the former Kaiser began writing and publishing his memoirs. In the first one, he claims that he had no fault for starting the Great War, and twice that, he defended his conduct during the length of his reign, particularly when it came to foreign policy. Yes, it was such good foreign policy that he had to give up his big boy German seat. But anyway, he spent most of his time entertaining guests, chopping wood, hunting, and he also got into archaeology. Fun! And then on came the 1930s, and the Nazis rise to power. Our dear old Wilhelm paid close attention to the party's many successes, and for a while he thought that it would serve as a prelude to the monarchy's restoration. His opinion soured, however, after he heard of the party's attempts to seize power, particularly during the Night of the Long Knives. He said of this event, and others like it he heard about, "For the first time, I am ashamed to be German." However, he seems to have shifted his opinion again after he saw the Nazi success in Poland and France. A man called Wilhelm von Dommes wrote in the old Kaiser's name, stating that the imperial house was still loyal, and after the fall of Paris, Wilhelm personally sent a telegram to Hitler congratulating him on the Wehrmacht's success. Towards the end of his life, the emperor felt admiration for Germany's new achievements, calling the early victories a succession of miracles, in writing to Hitler saying, "Under the deeply moving impression of France's capitulation, I congratulate you and all the German armed forces on the God-given prodigious victory," with the words of Kaiser Wilhelm the Great of the year 1870. What a turn of events through God's dispensation. All German hearts are filled with the chorale of Ruthen, which the victors of Ruthen, the soldiers of the great king, sang. Now thank we all our God. Wilhelm's character is a complicated one. He was a monarchist through and through, and to the end of his life, he wanted the monarchy to return to Germany. Yet, he also shared several ideas that the Nazi regime did, most notably anti-Semitism. He wrote in a letter to his sister in 1940 that Hitler's conquest was sure to bring about the United States of Europe, free of British and Jewish influence. Yikes. The Kaiser died in June 4th, 1941, of a pulmonary embolism at the age of 82. He was buried in the Netherlands, despite the Reich's wish to use him for propaganda. And well, that's it. Many more members of the royal family were scattered around the world, including in Germany, fighting for the Nazis. Wilhelm's son, Wilhelm, took up the mantle as the claimant to the throne and head of the family while he lived in Germany under watch from the Nazis. But the current head is a man called, I don't really know how to say this, but you know the name George, or like King George V or whatever. Name starts like that, but it doesn't have the E at the end. So, George good. Georg Friedrich von Prusen. That's the guy's name. He was born in 1976 and he attended schools in Bremen and Oldenburg. He finished his education in Scotland, in the city of Perth. To be honest, the current head is the more laid-back one I've looked into so far. Like, he's not obsessed with his family's history like the Portuguese claimant, and he doesn't have massive controversies like someone does. He's had conflicts with other members of the royal house, as expected at this point. Like, I mean, every royal has some sort of inheritance to everyone else, and so he's also married, filthy fucking rich, and he's got kids. And also, from what I've gathered, he does seem open to talking about his family's actual damage during the 20th century, and like some piles of bones. So in short, World War I was the precipice for the chaos and the war of the first half of the 20th century. And while the war was not started by the German Empire or by Kaiser Wilhelm, it is idiotic to think that they never wanted it. I'm not going to go into details on this, but the Western Allies shared just as much blame as the Central Powers did. Imperialism and domination were the prevalent ideologies in the world. Germany wanted more power, the British wanted to keep their power, the Austrians wanted more power, and so did the Russians. That's simply how it is. And the failures of the Treaty of Versailles and other World War I treaties led us directly to World War II. The same desire for us to expand that led to the formation of so many European colonial empires and led to the sort of European golden age, nutjobs on the internet call it, is the same desire that led to the deaths of over 100 million people in the span of 30 years. People see the tragedy in that, millions of dead Europeans. And these same nutters don't see the tragedy of millions of people outside of Europe who died because of the idea of imperialism during the centuries of colonialism. Yes, colonialism had positive impacts for the world, many of which we still feel today. Maybe I should make a video on that. But that doesn't change the casualty rate brought upon so much of the world because of it and imperialism. Our desire for domination and power led to the colonization of the Americas and Africa, just like it led to World War I and World War II. You know, it's common for particularly Europeans and North Americans to have a sort of Eurocentric worldview. It's a worldview that the Kaiser 100% had since he, by writing his memoirs, he was trying to justify his actions in his rule. But the world revolves around no one in particular. It simply revolves. Thanks for watching.